have given thousands of feedback to my fellow producers, and this is one of the biggest recurring problem I have seen, the lack of glue between the bass and the kick. These 4 tips will immediately improve your low end, regardless of whether you are making techno, melodic techno, house, or even pop music. Are you ready? Let's go! Before we start, we have to understand one thing: time and frequency domain of kick and bass. Let's take a look. Time domain. In time domain, a kick would often look like this: a short pulse, high up on the volume, and disappear in time. And bass, on the other hand, probably look like this: steady pulses of the bass that you are playing. And if you just mix them together, you will see this big bump when the kick and the bass hits at the same time, and this will sound quite awkward and not glued. On the other hand, when the kick and bass respond to each other, meaning that if you duck the bass a little bit when the kick hits, you will see this much smoother time domain response. Let's take a look at the frequency domain. These are our kicks and these are our basses. And here we see the frequency response from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Combination of these two often sounds very separated and not glued at all because they don't have any frequencies that are common. Combination of these two would sound quite glued because they have these bass that are same on the both, and this part will be helping the slight separation with the sound. Contrary to popular beliefs, these can actually work quite nicely as well, especially if you are doing the separation in the time domain. Because they are separated in the time domain, this similar frequency response would provide the glue that you need. Alright, we have this loop. At the moment, the bass and the kick is on top of each other. You can either go for full separation, where the kick and bass is completely separated. When the kick hits, there is no bass whatsoever. Or you can go for partial separation. When the kick hits, you sidechain your bass, but there is still bass left over, especially in the tail area, so that it can act as a glue. Let's make a full separation without, with. As the name suggests, this really separates the bass and the kick. That is the reason I like to use partial separation, where the thumb of the kick is clearly separated, but then you bring up the volume of the bass, kick tail and the bass blends in each other without. Sounds really awkward now. You can get similar results with sidechain compression as well. Use a high-pass filter for the incoming signal, in this case kick, and just targeting that initial click of the kick. Go up all the way here, and then you should use look ahead 10 milliseconds so that we start taking before even the kick hits. And then one more sidechain, but this time make it slower so that it can give us this pumping effect on the tail of the kick. And this time we will do the other way around. We will target the sub bass area, the tail of the kick, and then this will be slow pumping. And if we take a look at the shaper box without doing anything, we can see the similar effect with together. Pultec method. Let me explain. Let's say this is how your track looks like. We have the frequency range over here, and then we have the volume levels over here. And just for the example, let's say the volumes are equal on whole frequency range. The way this method works, this shape over here actually applied both the kick and the sub bass. You are really emphasizing on the sub area and taking off a little bit from the character. The loudness stays almost the same. Also, this is the area that people complain about the muddiness. So this curve gives this nice warm sub and glues kick and sub together. We have this loop over here. Really cool. Now to make the Pultec method work, you have to group the kick and bass together. First, I'm going to use a Pultec emulation. I'm using UAD, but there are tons of different free alternatives. Let's solo the low end. In Pultec, we have this low end boost. This is a low shelf. And then we have this attenuation, which will cut a little bit. The way I like to work it, first boost. And then cut over that until I feel like there's enough attenuation between 100 to 400 Hz. And you can always change the frequency to see which one fits best. I think this is good actually. And the one thing that you should be realizing is that I use the utility here to drop down the gain. Most of Pultec emulation already has initial gain. So when you A/B, always try to make it with a gain compensation. Kind of separation between sub bass and the mid lows. But lately I like to do it myself on an EQ curve because that gives me much more option with the curves and the frequencies itself. Just put in a shelf EQ like this and then put a bell cut like this and adjust the Q so that it's not that wide. And then you can actually add one more shelf EQ depending on how the curve will go for you. Something like this in the beginning and select all of them. And then you can easily adjust the gain and then change the position. This gives you much more flexibility. I feel like, for example, this fits much better to our track. And don't forget compensating the gain here. Without. That it really worked well for us in this case is we already had a low build up here due to re-space, so we could really nicely separate and focus on the low end and glue everything together. This video is made possible by GPU Audio. Are you frequently pushing your CPU to its limits? Up to now, all the plugins are processed by a CPU. The problem is we have limited cores in our CPUs. So GPU Audio has developed a new technology that can process the audio across thousands of GPU cores, removing the need for a CPU. But it doesn't end there. GPU Audio also partners with other audio companies. An example is VNMir Pro 3D, which gives the direct access to virtual representation of some of the world's most exciting acoustic spaces, and it's powered by GPU Audio technology. Whether you are using Windows or macOS, you can get all the GPU plugins for free with the link gpu.audio/mercurialtones. The link is also in the description below. Alright, this time we have this loop. This is perfect for glue compression because we have different base layers and we want everything to glue together. I'm gonna use glue compressor. You can use any VCA compressor as well. I'm gonna use also my favorite one afterwards. To make it more obvious for us, I'm gonna actually low pass the low end so that we can actually pinpoint what it's really doing to the low end. And then I'm gonna use Pro L2 so that we can see the dynamics of low end. Idea is simple. You turn in a glue compression, use like a medium attack, something like that. You should be able to see this pumping movement. And because we are decreasing a lot from the gain, you can use a bit makeup, keep the gain same level. Now, this will bring everything closer to each other and make it sound like they are glued together. Let me show you. This is without the compression. Take a look how close these two get compared to the original one. And this is what really glue compression does. It brings in that pumping feel and brings things together. But my favorite lately is using Tube SDA from R2. It squishes even more and sounds a bit warmer to my ears. Look at the needle doing exactly the same thing without. Wait. Do you hear how everything is kind of glued on the low end? Super cool. Sub-smoothing is really the advanced version of glue compression. This time we have this loop. Sub-smoothing is especially useful when you have few elements and you really want to bring the sub-end closer to each other. In this case we have this. You can actually apply sub-smoothing to individual tracks, but if you want to glue your low end, you should use it on the low end pass. This time we have a Pro MB, and we are gonna do the same thing, a low pass EQ and then bring Pro L2 to visualize what's going on. We are gonna smooth below 100 Hz here. Threshold is very important because it is the part you start to compress your sub bass. In this case, I'm gonna keep it high so that I can again see this movement, that needle movement on my low shelf here, right? Then you can increase actually range. Can increase the release. I'm gonna boost a bit lows, compensate the gain a little bit. Compared to glue compression, this will also have this weird ramp up on the sustained sub basses. You will clearly see it. With, without, kick sub and the bass sub got close together. We see all the smooth ramp down and ramp up curves due to the compression, hence the name sub-smoothing for this technique. And this one is the most advanced way to glue your kick and bass. It is like taking two different ingredients, making a sauce, but the sauce is mashing them together and putting on top of your dish so that everything is glued together. Let me show you. We have this loop over here. It is already pretty cool loop, pretty cool low end as well. But let's say we want to get this extra 5% and glue it even more. The first thing that you have to do, right click and insert the return track. From here, go to your low end and send around -6 dB And don't touch this again because it changes everything in our return channel. And then go to your return channel. The first thing that you should do, adding a distortion or saturation. In this case, I'm using Eventide Crush Station. Sounds like this. We have this gritty, distorted low end. And from there, I'm going to use Pultec to just cut those super mids so that we don't end up boxy low end. Like this, right? It makes it softer. And from there, I tend to use a gentle compression. In this case, we are using Ozone Vintage compression. And now the trick is adjusting the amount of the sauce. Don't add too much because it can overtake the dish, or don't add too little that we don't taste anything. You should find a sweet spot. One thing to remember, because we are adding extra on our original song, this will actually increase your volume. So you may want to limit the sound with a limiter without mid. Slightly more glued and makes it also a bit more in your face. If you want to learn more about low end, I have another video over here. Take a look.